Bride left at the altar for being overweight, but farmer changes her fate at the last minute. Emily Parker felt her heart race as the 200 guests settled into the small church in Meadowbrook, rural Virginia. After 3 years of dating, Brandon, the big day had finally arrived. But something about her future mother-in-law's fleeting glances during the preparations had planted a seed of doubt in her heart. Then the murmurs began. The groom, who should have been at the altar 20 minutes ago, still hadn't arrived. Father Michael tried to calm the situation when Jessica, Emily's best friend, approached with an envelope in trembling hands and an expression mixing anger and pity. "It came with his driver," she whispered, handing over the paper. As she read the message, Emily felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her. "I can't marry someone your size. Forgive me." The letters danced before her eyes as whispers grew, louder in the church decorated with wildflowers. He's not coming," Emily managed to say, her voice barely audible. Brandon's mother, Mrs. Catherine, suddenly seemed relieved in her front pew. She had always made comments about how Emily should take better care of herself before the wedding. Emily's father, Richard, stood up furious, his red face contrasting with his graying hair. "That cowardly boy doesn't even have the guts to say it to your face." But Emily could no longer hear. With shaky legs and a face streaked with tears, she lifted the hem of her wedding dress and ran out of the church, ignoring her mother's calls and the pitying stares of the guests. The veil came loose in her desperate escape as she ran aimlessly through the fields surrounding the property where the ceremony was held. The October sun beat down mercilessly, and soon her white dress was stained with dirt and grass. Emily didn't know how long she had run when she tripped over a rock and fell to her knees in the dusty ground. That's when she heard footsteps approaching. "Are you all right?" asked a deep, gentle voice. Looking up, she saw a sturdy man with dark blonde hair and a scruffy beard, wearing a faded plaid shirt and worn jeans. He extended a hand to help her. I don't know," she answered honestly, accepting his help with trembling hands. "I'm Jack Miller. My farm is nearby. I saw you running and thought you might need help," he said, keeping a respectful distance. "Would you like to come over for some water? I can take you wherever you need afterward." Emily hesitated for a moment, looking at her ruined dress and feeling the weight of humiliation. Going back to the church was unthinkable. Going home meant facing the pitying stares of the small town for months, maybe years. "Thank you. I'd appreciate that." As they walked in silence through the open field, Emily noticed Jack didn't ask invasive questions. He simply guided her with a calm presence. Sunflower Farm, as he called it, appeared after a 15-minute walk, a simple but well-kept house surrounded by cornfields and an orchard in the back. "My Aunt Martha should be inside," he remarked, opening the wooden gate. "She'll be better at helping than I am." As they stepped onto the porch, a kind-faced elderly woman with white hair appeared in the doorway, her eyes widening at the unusual sight. "Good heavens, boy. What happened?" "Aunt, this is..." He paused, realizing he didn't know her name. "Emily," she finished, her voice still shaky. "Emily needed help. I thought you might..." Before he could finish, Mrs. Martha had already wrapped Emily in a motherly hug, as if she could sense exactly what had happened. Maybe she could, Emily thought, given the state of her dirty wedding dress and her disheveled appearance. "Come, my dear, let's go inside, get you a bath and some clean clothes. After that, if you want to talk, we can. If not, that's fine, too." Emily let herself be led into the simple but cozy house, with well-kept wooden furniture and lace curtains on the windows. In the living room, she noticed family photos and, prominently displayed, a picture of a younger Jack beside a pretty girl in graduation attire. While Mrs. Martha prepared the bath, Jack stayed on the porch, giving her space. Emily could hear him on the phone, speaking softly. "No, Dad, I won't be able to pick up the order in Three Rivers today. Something came up here. I'll explain later." The warm bath was a balm for Emily's aching body. The borrowed clothes, a floral skirt that belonged to her aunt and a simple blouse, were too big but clean and smelled of fabric softener. When she returned to the living room, she found Mrs. Martha preparing coffee in the adjacent kitchen. "Sit down, dear," A strong coffee is always good at times like this. Emily obeyed, watching the efficient woman move around the kitchen. Jack had disappeared, likely to give her privacy. He went to check on the chickens, Mrs. Martha said, as if reading her thoughts. My nephew is like that, discreet, never one to meddle in other people's lives. He's been very kind, Emily murmured, accepting the steaming cup. Mrs. Martha sat across from her, her wise eyes studying Emily without judgment. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. If you'd rather not say anything, that's fine too, and you can stay as long as you need. We have a guest room that's hardly ever used. The selfless kindness was too much for Emily. The tears, which had momentarily dried, came back in full force. Between sobs, she told her everything. The 3-year relationship with Brandon, her mother-in-law's constant remarks about her weight, the wedding preparations, and finally, the humiliating abandonment through a cowardly note. And now I don't know what to do, she concluded, wiping her face with a handkerchief the older woman offered. I can't go back home right now. I can't face everyone. No one should go through that, Mrs. Martha replied firmly. And no one has the right to judge others for their body. That boy doesn't deserve your tears, dear. You don't understand, and the whole town will talk. Everyone will look at me with pity. I do understand. Mrs. Martha's voice grew distant. More than you think. At that moment, Jack came in through the back door, carrying a basket of fresh eggs. Seeing Emily in tears, he made to retreat, but his aunt called him. Come here, Jack. I think Emily needs to hear your story too. He looked uncomfortable but obeyed, setting the basket on the counter and sitting at the table with them. Emily noticed his hands, though calloused from farm work, moved with surprising delicacy. Aunt, I don't think... Tell her about... Heather, Mrs. Martha insisted. Jack took a deep breath, running a hand through his tousled hair before speaking. 5 years ago, I was supposed to get married too, he began, avoiding Emily's gaze. Heather was the daughter of the town's bank owner. We met when I went to ask for a loan to expand the farm. We dated for a year, made plans, set a date. His voice faltered for a moment. 3 days before the wedding, she told me she couldn't go through with it, that she was ashamed to marry a country bumpkin with no education like me, that her family expected more from her. At least she had the guts to say it to my face. Emily felt an immediate connection to that pain. I'm so sorry, she whispered. At first, I thought I'd never get over it, he continued. I sold part of the land, almost gave up on everything. But the farm saved me. The work here, the land, it kept me going. What Jack isn't saying, interrupted Martha, is that he turned that pain into something positive. He renovated the house, improved production, even started taking online agriculture courses. Jack seemed embarrassed by his aunt's praise. What I mean is that you'll get through this, he said directly to Emily. It'll hurt, it'll be hard, but one day you'll look back and realize you dodged marrying someone who didn't deserve your love. Emily's phone, which had been in the bag Martha rescued along with her belongings, began ringing insistently. She glanced at the screen. Her mother. After several missed calls, a message arrived. Sweetheart, where are you? We're worried. Your father wants to go to the police. I need to let them know I'm okay, said Emily, standing up, but I don't want to go back. Not yet. You can stay here as long as you need, Martha offered. I don't want to be a bother. It's no trouble, Jack assured her. We have plenty of space and we know what it's like to need refuge. Emily typed a quick message to her mother. I'm fine. I need some time alone. Don't worry. Then she turned off her phone, feeling an odd sense of relief. That night, lying in the guest room bed, Emily cried herself to sleep, clutching the pillow. But for the first time since reading Brandon's note, she didn't feel completely alone. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning brought the scent of fresh coffee and homemade bread. It took Emily a few seconds to remember where she was and why. When the memory returned, it brought a wave of pain, but less overwhelming than the day before. She got up, washed her face, and put on the same borrowed clothes, trying to tame her unruly brown hair with her fingers. In the kitchen, she found Martha preparing breakfast, and Jack already dressed for work, wearing boots and a hat. Good morning, he greeted with a shy smile. "Sleep well." "Better than I expected," Emily replied, surprised it was true. "Sit down, dear," Martha invited, placing a steaming mug in front of her. "Eat something. Nothing gets solved on an empty stomach." The simple breakfast, homemade bread, fresh butter, local cheese and guava jelly, was the first moment Emily felt her body respond beyond the pain. She was starving, she realized after the first bite. "I have to head out to the fields," Jack announced, standing. "If you need anything, Emily, just ask my aunt." "Thank you for everything." Jack gave a nod and left, leaving behind only the scent of aftershave and coffee. "He's a good man," Martha remarked, sitting with her own cup. "Works from dawn till dusk to keep this farm running, despite all the hardships." "Hardships? The property used to be bigger and more prosperous," the older woman explained, her gaze drifting to the window. "My brother, Jack's father, fell. Till years ago. They spent so much on treatments. Then after he passed, the bank debts came. To make it worse, that heartbreak with his fiancée. Jack nearly lost everything." Emily felt a pang of guilt for being there, adding another burden to these people's lives. "Don't worry, I'll only stay today. Tomorrow I'll go to my parents' house." "I didn't say that to rush you, dear," Martha said kindly, touching her hand. "I just wanted to explain why we understand needing time and space when your heart's broken." After breakfast, Emily briefly called her mother, assuring her she was staying safely with friends and would return when she was ready. Mrs. Sharon, through tears, shared that Brandon had disappeared from town, that his mother was saying it's better this way, and that Emily's father was threatening to sue the young man's family for the wedding expenses. I don't want any lawsuits, Mum," Emily said firmly. "I just want to forget." "But honey, your father spent almost all our savings on this wedding, and that good for nothing. Please, Mum, just give me a few days." She hung up, feeling the weight of the whole situation. It wasn't just her own pain she had to manage, but also her parents' anger, the town's gossip and the financial consequences. Everything seemed too much to handle. Mrs. Martha, noticing her distress, suggested, "Why don't you help me in the garden? Working with the soil clears the mind." Emily agreed, grateful for the distraction. She had never done manual labor beyond small household chores. She worked as a secretary at the only accounting office in small Meadowbrook, but she discovered something therapeutic about sinking her hands into the earth, pulling weeds and watering vegetables under the mild autumn sun. "I have got a knack for this," Mrs. Martha remarked after an hour, as they paused to drink water in the shade of a mango tree. "Plants can sense when they're touched with care." "I never thought I'd enjoy this," Emily admitted. "In the city, we always think farm work is just hardship. Every job has its challenges, but few offer the rewards the land gives. Here, each day brings a small joy, a ripe fruit, a new sprout, rain at just the right time." Emily looked around the property. Up close, she noticed that despite being well kept, the farm showed clear signs of financial struggle. Fences in need of repair, an old tractor parked under a tarp, facilities that could house far more animals than the few she saw in the pasture. At noon, Jack returned for lunch, accompanied by Hank, an older worker, who helped on the farm 3 days a week. The meal was simple but tasty. Rice, beans, sautéed greens, and a free-range chicken with okra that made Emily go back for seconds, momentarily forgetting her troubles. "Are you from the city, miss?" Hank asked, curious but respectful. "From Meadowbrook," Emily replied, feeling a lump in her throat at the thought of the town. "Hank here knows a thing or two about accounting," Mrs. Martha interjected, deftly changing the subject. "He works at Mr. Walter's office." "Ah, Mr. Walter's a good professional," Hank commented. "Jack here could sure use someone like that to sort out the paperwork here. Everything's scribbled in old notebooks." Jack shot Hank a warning look, and the worker immediately fell silent, realizing he'd touched on a sensitive topic. "I don't fuss over bureaucracy," Jack said defensively. "As long as I can plant and harvest, the rest is just details." "Details that matter when the bank comes knocking," Hank muttered, earning another glare from Jack. The meal ended in awkward silence. After Hank left to resume work, Emily offered, "I could take a look at the books if you'd like. It's the least I can do to thank you for your hospitality." "No need to worry about that," Jack replied quickly. "You're our guest." "I insist. I need to keep busy and this is what I know how to do." After some resistance, Jack finally agreed. He led Emily to a small makeshift office on the back porch where stacked boxes held invoices, receipts, and handwritten ledgers. "It's a mess, I know," he admitted sheepishly. "Ever since my father fell ill, the paperwork's been neglected." "I can organize this," Emily said, feeling useful for the first time in days. "I just need a new notebook, a pen and a calculator. We've got all that, and if you need a computer, you can use my laptop." It's not the most modern, but it works. For the next 3 days, Emily threw herself into work. She discovered the farm's financial situation was even more precarious than she'd imagined. There was a heavy mortgage on the property, debts with suppliers, and a bank loan with outrageous interest rates. On the other hand, the farm had untapped potential: a crystal-clear spring, fertile land, and a prime location near the road leading to the state capital. On the evening of the 3rd day, after Mrs. Martha had retired, Emily called Jack to show him what she'd uncovered. At the kitchen table under the lamplight, she presented organized spreadsheets and a basic financial restructuring plan. "If we can renegotiate the bank debt and invest in organic production, which has a higher market value, we could balance the books in 2 years, she explained, pointing to the numbers. "And there's this area here, near the spring, that would be perfect for agritourism." Jack looked at the papers with a mix of surprise and admiration. "You did all this in 3 days? It helps when you have training in the field." She smiled, feeling competent for the first time since her marriage disaster. "And I also wanted to repay you somehow. I never imagined we were so close to losing everything," he murmured, running a hand through his hair in worry. "But you also didn't realize how much potential you had, right?" Emily tried to cheer him up. "Your farm has enormous potential, Jack." "Wow, you're incredible," he said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you." The sincere compliment caught Emily off guard. How long had it been since anyone called her incredible? Brandon had always praised her pretty face, or said she was adorable, as if speaking to a child or a pet. He'd never acknowledged her intelligence or professional competence like this. "No need to thank me," she replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "You and your aunt took me in when I needed it most. That's priceless." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. "Tomorrow I'm going back to my parents' house," Emily finally announced. "I can't put it off any longer." "Are you sure?" asked Jack, and she couldn't tell if there was disappointment in his voice. "You can stay longer if you want. I need to face what I left behind. Besides, I have work, bills to pay." "I understand, but know our door will always be open for you." The next morning, Jack insisted on driving her to town in his old pickup truck. The 40-minute ride was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Emily watched the rural landscape gradually give way to the first houses of Meadowbrook, her chest tightening at the thought of what lay ahead. When they stopped in front of the modest house where she lived with her parents, Emily hesitated before getting out. "Thank you for everything, Jack. Truly." "If you need anything," he began, handing her a slip of paper with his phone number. "I'll be fine." She tried to smile but didn't quite succeed. "And I hope you use those spreadsheets. The farm deserves a chance." When Emily finally stepped out and watched the pickup drive away, she felt as though a brief but meaningful chapter of her life had closed. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the door and rang the bell of her own home like a stranger. The door opened immediately. Her mother, Mrs. Sharon, a 60-year-old woman with the same rounded figure as Emily, let out a joyful cry at the sight of her and pulled her into a tight hug that smelled of cheap perfume and homemade bread. "My daughter, thank God you're back." Her father appeared right behind, his expression torn between relief and poorly contained anger. Emily knew it wasn't directed at her, but at the situation. "Where have you been, girl? You had us worried sick," he scolded, his way of showing affection through reprimand. "It's a long story, Dad," replied Emily, entering the house where she'd grown up and feeling paradoxically like a visitor. The following hours were exhausting. Emily shared an edited version of where she'd been, at the farm of some acquaintances who found me after the incident, and listened to the details of the chaos that had followed her escape. Brandon's family had spread the word that the wedding was called off due to incompatibilities, and some people even hinted it had been a mutual decision. The catering had been donated to a local nursing home. The wedding dress, now cleaned, and hanging in her room, looked like a white ghost, constantly reminding her of failure. "I'll pay you back for everything you spent," Emily promised, realizing how much her parents, already retired and on a limited income, had sacrificed for the wedding. "Don't worry about that now, dear," replied Mrs. Sharon, still treating her as if she were made of glass. "What matters is that you're okay, and that punk better pay for what he did," added her father Richard, his mustache trembling with indignation. "I've already spoken to Dr. Vincent about filing a lawsuit for emotional damages." "I don't want any lawsuit, Dad. I just want to move on." Moving on, however, proved harder than Emily had imagined. When she returned to work on Monday, she felt everyone's eyes on her. Some people were kind, offering words of support and solidarity. Others barely hid their morbid curiosity. And then there were those like Mrs. Catherine, Brandon's mother, who avoided her completely, crossing the street to stay out of her path. The nights were particularly difficult. Lying in the single bed she'd used her whole life, Emily relived the moment of humiliation, imagined alternate scenarios, fantasized about confrontations she'd never have the courage to face. One sleepless night, she grabbed her phone and, almost without thinking, dialed the number Jack had given her. He answered on the second ring, his voice hoarse as if he'd just woken up. "Hello? Jack, it's Emily. Sorry to call so late." "Emily?" His voice immediately sharpened. "Is something wrong?" "No, I just..." She didn't. "I know how to explain. I couldn't sleep and I wanted to know how things are at the farm." There was a brief silence, and Emily feared she'd made a mistake. But then his voice returned, softer. "The farm's doing fine. I've started implementing some of your ideas. Scheduled a meeting at the bank for next week." "That's good. And you? How's the return been?" "Hard," she admitted. "Everyone stares. Everyone talks. It's like I have a sign on my forehead saying, 'The fat girl who got left at the altar.' I'm sorry you're going through that." His voice carried genuine concern. "If you ever want to escape the city for a bit, our door's still open." The offer was tempting, but Emily knew she couldn't just run from reality. "Thank you, but I need to face this. I just needed to hear a friendly voice. You can call any time, whenever you want." When she hung up, Emily felt strangely comforted. She fell asleep soon after, having her first peaceful rest since coming home. The following weeks passed in a routine of work, home, and stairs that gradually lessened as the novelty of the wedding that didn't happen was replaced by other small-town gossip. Emily avoided going out unless necessary, but carried out her duties with as much dignity as she could muster. One afternoon, while organizing documents at the accounting office, she received an unexpected visitor. Jack walked in, looking out of place in his clean but simple jeans, holding his hat in his hands. "Jack!" she exclaimed, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Came for the meeting at the bank," he explained, "and I brought those documents you mentioned might be useful." It was a transparent excuse, Emily realized. The documents could easily have been mailed or discussed over the phone. He had come to see her. "How nice," she smiled, genuinely happy about the visit. "Let's take a look at them." For over an hour, they discussed strategies for renegotiating the debt. Emily noticed that Jack had prepared well, studying all the financial terms she had mentioned in her spreadsheets. There was a practical intelligence in him that she admired more and more. "I really appreciate your help," he said when they finished. "Actually, I have a proposal for you." "A proposal? I'd like to hire you as a financial consultant for the farm. It would be part-time work, maybe on weekends. I can pay a percentage of the savings we achieve through restructuring." Emily blinked, surprised. "Are you serious?" "Never been more serious. You understand this better than any accountant I've ever consulted, and honestly, I trust you." The offer was professionally intriguing. Emily had always dreamed of having her own clients instead, of just processing paperwork for Mr. Walter. Besides, the idea of spending more time at the farm, away from the prying eyes of Meadowbrook, was tempting. "I accept," she replied, extending her hand. "But let's set a fixed rate, not based on savings. It'll be fairer for you." Jack smiled, shaking her hand. "Whatever you say, accountant. When he left, Emily felt lighter than she had in weeks. Having a project, something to focus on beyond the humiliation she'd endured, seemed to open a small window of hope in her life. The following Saturday, Jack picked her up early in his truck. The day would be dedicated to organizing all the farm's paperwork before the crucial bank meeting scheduled for the following week. Mrs. Martha welcomed them with a warm hug and fresh coffee. The woman seemed genuinely happy to see Emily again. "This house feels brighter when you're here, my dear," she remarked, serving still warm cornbread. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly welcome somewhere. They worked all day in the small office, now more organized. Jack had bought folders, labels, and even a new printer, showing his commitment to the restructuring project. Emily noticed other small improvements around the farm, fences repaired, more animals in the pasture, a general air of renewal. "You've been implementing quite a few of my suggestions," she observed during an afternoon snack break. "All I could with the resources available," he confirmed. "And it's already making a difference. We secured a contract to supply organic milk to a cooperative in 3 Rivers. That's wonderful." Just the beginning. His eyes shone with an enthusiasm Emily hadn't seen before. "If we can renegotiate the bank debt, we can invest in specialty cheese production. Aunt Martha has traditional family recipes no one else in the region makes." His excitement was contagious. For the first time since the wedding disaster, Emily found herself thinking about the future with hope instead of dread. When the work ended, it was already night. Jack insisted they have dinner before heading back to town. Under the soft kitchen light, they chatted about small things, laughed at stories Mrs. Martha told about Jack as a child, and for a few hours, Emily completely forgot about the cruel note and the public humiliation. "Why don't you stay for Sunday, too?" Mrs. Martha suggested as they finished dessert. "Tomorrow we're making fresh corn cakes." "I didn't bring clothes. I still have the ones I lent you last time," the woman smiled. "And I bet Jack wouldn't. Mind picking you up again next week?" "Not at all," he confirmed with a shy smile. "It'd be my pleasure." Emily hesitated. Staying would mean spending more time in that welcoming refuge, but it would also stir up talk in town. She could already imagine the whispers. "They say she's already chasing after Farmer Miller. Didn't even wait for the wedding cake to cool." "I can't," she finally decided. "My parents would worry, and I have commitments tomorrow." It wasn't entirely true, but Jack didn't press. He drove her back to town in comfortable silence, the radio softly playing an old country song. "Thank you for the day," she said when they arrived. "It was refreshing to get away from the city for a bit. Come back whenever you like, any time." For a moment, Emily thought he might say something more. There was hesitation. In his eyes, an unspoken question. But the moment passed, and she stepped out of the car with a shy wave. On Sunday, while helping her mother prepare lunch, Emily caught herself thinking about Sunflower Farm, the corn cakes they'd be making, and Jack's quiet smile. Part of her regretted not staying. "You seem different today," Mrs. Sharon observed, interrupting her thoughts. "Less sad." "I'm feeling better, Mom," Emily admitted. "I think I'm finally moving past what happened." "Does it have something to do with that farm work you mentioned?" Emily smiled without answering directly. She wasn't ready to examine exactly what the farm and its inhabitants meant to her. The following week was decisive. On Wednesday, Jack had his meeting at the bank, armed with all the spreadsheets and projections Emily had prepared. He called her as soon as he left, elated. "It worked. We renegotiated the debt with much lower interest and an extended term." The manager was impressed with the restructuring plan. His joy was contagious. Emily felt proud to have contributed to that victory. "We should celebrate," Jack continued. "How about dinner on Saturday? I know a great restaurant on the U. Away to 3 Rivers." The invitation hung in the air, full of possibilities. It was no longer a work meeting, and they both knew it. "I'd love to," Emily replied, her heart racing. On Saturday, Emily took more time than usual to get ready. She chose a floral dress that flattered her neckline, applied her makeup carefully, and even bought a new perfume. When she looked in the mirror, she felt beautiful for the first time in months. Her mother watched her with a mix of happiness and concern. "Sweetheart, this farmer, you know people will talk, don't you? Let them talk, Mom, Emily answered, with a calmness that surprised even herself. They've already said so much about me that it doesn't matter anymore. The restaurant Jack had chosen was rustic but charming, with solid wood tables and a view of the valley. He waited for her at the entrance, wearing a crisp blue dress shirt and clean pants, his hair combed back, visibly nervous. "You look beautiful," he said the moment he saw her, with a sincerity that made Emily blush. Dinner was pleasant, their conversation flowing naturally between personal and professional topics. Jack talked about his plans for the farm now, that the debt renegotiation had opened new possibilities. Emily shared her dream of one day opening her own accounting office. "Why not start with an office at the farm?" he suggested. "We have that unused room in the back. You could serve rural clients in the area." The idea was tempting. Emily had already noticed an unmet demand among the local small producers who couldn't afford the fees of city accountants. "It would be a good start," she admitted, letting herself dream a little. When dinner ended, neither seemed to want the night to end. Jack suggested a walk through the small, illuminated garden behind the restaurant. "I have something to tell you," he said as they strolled under the stars. "I started the process to get the farm organic certified." "Jack, that's wonderful. It'll add so much value to the production." "All thanks to you." He stopped, turning to face her. "You came into my life just when I was about to give up on everything." The intensity of his gaze sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "I'm the one who should be thanking you," she replied softly. "You took me in when I was at my lowest. I think we found each other when we needed one another the most." Slowly, as if afraid to scare her, Jack moved closer and gently touched her face. Emily closed her eyes, letting herself feel the soft touch of his fingers, calloused from farm work. "Can I kiss you?" he whispered. Emily didn't answer with words. She simply leaned forward, closing the distance between them. The kiss was gentle, hesitant at first, then more confident. Unlike any other Emily had ever experienced, there were no expectations or pressure, just the present moment in all its simplicity and perfection. When they pulled apart, Jack kept his hands on her face as if she was something precious. "I promised myself I'd never fall in love again," he murmured. "After Heather, I thought I'd never trust anyone again." "I know exactly how you feel," Emily replied, thinking of her own vow never to expose herself to rejection again. "But some promises are meant to be broken, don't you think?" The drive back to Meadowbrook was quiet, but filled with a new intimacy. Their hands occasionally brushed against each other on the truck's console, and every touch brought an involuntary smile to Emily's lips. At her doorstep, they shared another kiss, shorter but just as meaningful. "Can I see you tomorrow?" Jack asked. "Isn't that too soon?" she teased. "I've already wasted too much time in my life, Emily. I don't want to lose another day." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following weeks brought a gradual change in Emily's life. Her visits to Sunflower Farm became more frequent, and soon she and Jack settled into a routine. She spent entire weekends at the farm, helping with administrative tasks and, little by little, learning about the work on the land. To Emily's surprise, the idea of a rural accounting office began to take shape when 3 neighboring farmers asked Jack for a recommendation for who made those spreadsheets for the bank. Soon, she had her first independent clients. Martha watched the blossoming relationship with quiet approval, only occasionally letting slip comments like, "This house needed young laughter," or "I've never seen my nephew so happy." In town, as expected, the gossip wasn't far behind. Some people, like the busybody Gladys, hinted that Emily was taking advantage of the lonely farmer. Others, more malicious, said Jack must have settled because he couldn't do better. "I don't know how you managed to ignore those poisonous tongues," commented Jessica, Emily's best friend, during a coffee break one Wednesday afternoon. "It's not that I don't care," Emily explained, stirring her cappuccino absently. "It's just that I've realized people will talk no matter what. They talked when I was with Brandon, they talked when I was left behind, and they'd talk if I stayed alone forever. So why not do what makes me happy?" "And Jack makes you happy?" Jessica asked with genuine interest. Emily smiled, feeling her face warm. "So much, in a way I didn't even know was possible." "How so?" With Brandon, I always felt like I had to make up for the fact that he was with me, as if I owed him gratitude for accepting me. Emily made air quotes. With Jack, it's different. He looks at me like I'm exactly what he always wanted. Not despite my body, but with it. Jessica smiled, squeezing her friend's hand on the table. I'm happy for you, truly. After everything you've been through, you deserve this. That weekend, Emily was preparing for another visit to the farm when she received an unexpected call. It was Sarah, Brandon's older sister. Emily, can we talk? Her voice sounded hesitant on the other end. About what, Sarah? Emily felt her heart race. The Thompsons had cut off all contact since the wedding disaster. I need to see you in person. It's important. Reluctantly, Emily agreed to meet her at the small central square before heading to the farm. She told Jack she'd be running a little late without explaining why, fearing his reaction. Sarah was already waiting when she arrived, sitting on a bench under the trees. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. Thank you for coming, she said as Emily approached. What's going on, Sarah? Emily asked directly, preferring to avoid small talk. I need to apologize to you, Sarah began, surprising Emily. For what my brother did. For what our family did, really. Emily sat beside her, confused by the unexpected approach. Why now? Brandon came back yesterday, Sarah revealed. He was staying at a cousin's place in Richmond all this time. The name of her ex-fiancé, which Emily hadn't heard in months, felt strangely distant. It was like talking about someone from another life. And what does that have to do with me? She asked, genuinely not understanding. He wants to see you. He wants to apologize. Emily took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions that surprised. There was no anger or pain, as she might have expected, just mild annoyance at the inconvenience. I'm not interested, Sarah. That ended the moment he left that note. He was confused, Emily. Mum filled his head with nonsense about how hard it would be, how people would stare. And he believed it, Emily finished. Believed it enough to humiliate me in front of 200 people. Sarah looked down, ashamed. He regretted it the next minute, but he was scared, embarrassed. And now what does he want, for me to say it's all fine? That we can try again? He knows you're seeing someone else. Sarah chose her words carefully. But he thinks you two can still talk, work things out. Emily almost laughed at the audacity. I'm happy now, Sarah. Truly happy. I don't feel anything for your brother anymore except gratitude, maybe. Gratitude? Sarah looked genuinely confused. Yes, if he hadn't left me at that altar, I never would have met Jack, Emily explained, realizing the truth in her own words as she spoke. I never would have known what it's like to be truly loved and respected. So yes, in a strange way, I'm grateful for what happened. Sarah watched her for a long moment, as if seeing Emily for the first time. You've changed, she finally said. You seem stronger. I haven't changed, Sarah. I just found someone who lets me be who I always was. When they said goodbye, Emily felt oddly light. The meeting had given her a kind of closure she didn't know she still needed. As she waited at the bus station, for the ride that would take her closest to Sunflower Farm, she saw a familiar face approaching. Brandon looked thinner and more worn than she remembered. His eyes, once confident, now avoided direct contact. I knew you'd be here, he said, stopping a few steps away. Sarah told me you were going to the farm. What do you want, Brandon? Asked Emily, keeping her voice steady. To see you, talk to you, explain. There's nothing to explain. Your note was quite clear. He took a step forward, looking desperate. It was a terrible mistake, the worst of my life. I was confused, scared, and cowardly, she added. Yes, cowardly, he admitted, surprising her. But I'm here now, trying to make things right. Emily shook her head, incredulous. Make things right? You think abandoning someone at the altar is something you fix with an apology months later? I know it seems impossible, but it's not impossible, Brandon. It's unnecessary. We've moved on. I've moved on. With that country bumpkin? The words slipped out before he could stop them, revealing the real reason for his approach. Jealousy, not remorse. Emily felt her face burn with indignation. That country bumpkin has more character and dignity in his little finger than you have in your entire body. Brandon seemed genuinely surprised by the firm response. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... It's just that people are saying he's only with you because—" "Because what?" Emily challenged, stepping forward. "Because I'm fat. Because I was rejected. Because I must be desperate for male attention." His silence was answer enough. "Let me tell you a secret, Brandon," she continued, her voice low but intense. "There are men who can love a woman for who she is, not for the size she wears. Men who value intelligence, kindness, and strength. And I thank my lucky stars every day that you're not one of them, because if you were, I never would have found Jack." Just then, the bus arrived, breaking the standoff. Emily grabbed her small suitcase, ready to board. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Brandon. Truly. But it won't be with me." The 40-minute ride gave Emily time to process the encounter. When she got off at the stop near the farm entrance, she had already decided to tell Jack everything. She didn't want secrets between them, especially about something that might reach his ears through other means. Jack was waiting for her at the property's entrance, as he always did. His smile when he saw her step off the bus warmed Emily's heart, erasing any lingering unease from her run-in with Brandon. "I thought you weren't coming today," he said, hugging her and taking her suitcase. "We need to talk," Emily replied as they walked toward the house. The seriousness in her voice put Jack on instant alert. Did something happen? Brandon came back to town. Emily felt his body tense beside her, but he didn't stop walking or let go of her hand. "And you saw him?" he asked simply, keeping his voice neutral. "Yes. He showed up at the bus station while I was waiting." "I see." They reached the porch in silence. Jack set the suitcase on one of the wooden benches and turned to face her. "What did he want?" he finally asked, his expression carefully controlled. "What do you think?" Emily replied. "To give us a second chance," as if I were the one in the wrong. A muscle twitched in Jack's jaw. "And what did you say?" Emily stepped closer, cupping his face in her hands. "I said I was happy, that I'd found someone who loves me for who I am, that the best thing that ever happened to me was being left at that altar, because it led me to you." The tension in Jack's body melted away, replaced by an emotion that made his eyes shine brightly. "You said that?" he murmured, his voice rough. "Every word," she confirmed, "and it's the absolute truth." He pulled her into a tight hug, burying his face in her hair. "I was scared," he admitted softly. "When you said he was back, I thought maybe what? That I'd go running back to the man who humiliated me in front of everyone." "The first people we love always leave deep marks," replied Jack, stepping back to look her in the eyes. "I know from experience. For years, I thought I'd never get over Heather." "And did you?" "Completely," he smiled, kissing her softly. The moment I saw a bride in a white dress running desperately across my field, I knew my life would never be the same. That weekend marked a new phase in their relationship. Something had subtly shifted, as if the ghosts of past relationships had finally been laid to rest, allowing them to build something entirely new without comparisons or fears. On Sunday evening, as they dined on the porch under the stars, Jack seemed unusually nervous, pushing his food around without really eating. "Is something wrong?" asked Emily, noticing his behavior. "No, nothing's wrong. I was just thinking—" He hesitated, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Your trip here every weekend isn't very practical, is it?" "I don't mind," she answered sincerely. "It's worth every minute. Still, it feels like a waste of time, of money on tickets." Emily tilted her head, confused by the direction of the conversation. "Where are you going with this, Jack?" He set his fork down on the plate, looking directly at her. "What if you didn't have to travel anymore? What if you stayed here? Are you asking me to move in with you?" Emily's heart raced. "I am," he confirmed, taking her hands across the table. "I know it might seem sudden, that it hasn't even been a year since we met, but I'm sure of how I feel, Emily. I'm sure I want to build a life with you. Here on the farm, making it thrive together." Emily felt her eyes welling with tears. 6 months ago, she'd been preparing to marry a man who saw her as an embarrassment. Now, another man looked at her as if she were his greatest treasure. "I'm sure too," she replied, smiling through her tears. "I've never been so certain of anything in my life. The smile that lit up Jack's face was like the sunrise. "There's one more thing," he said, standing and walking to the edge of the porch where he retrieved something hidden among the potted plants. He returned with a small wrapped package in his hands. "What's this?" Emily asked, intrigued. "Open it." Inside the package was a hand-carved wooden plaque that read, "Emily Parker, Rural Accounting." "For your office," Jack explained. "I've already started renovating the back room. It'll be your professional space, independent, because I know how much that matters to you." The gesture, so simple yet so meaningful, touched Emily deeply. It wasn't just an invitation to share a home, but a whole life with respect for her individuality and aspirations. "I love you," she said, words she hadn't yet spoken aloud, though she'd felt them for a long time. "I love you too," he replied, pulling her into his arms. "More than I ever thought possible." The news that Emily was moving to Sunflower Farm spread quickly through Small Meadowbrook. As expected, it sparked a wave of comments, some approving, others thinly veiled criticism. "You're throwing your career away," warned Walter, the owner of the office where she worked, when she handed in her resignation. "On the contrary," Emily replied confidently, "I'm expanding my professional horizons." Her parents, initially apprehensive, ended up supporting her decision when they saw their daughter's genuine happiness. "We just want you to be happy, dear," said Sharon, helping her pack her belongings. "And that young man seems to make you very happy." "He does, Mum, more than I can explain." Richard, ever practical, insisted on seeing the farm's facilities and the so-called office Emily kept mentioning. When Jack took him to see the completely renovated space with new furniture, a computer, printer, and even a small waiting area for clients, the old man was visibly impressed. "The boy knows what he's doing," he commented later in private with his daughter. "It's not just talk." Her parents' support meant a lot to Emily. Later that evening, sharing the news with Jack over the phone, she said, "I think they've finally accepted it. Dad was really impressed with the office." "I did my best," Jack replied, sounding genuinely relieved. "I wanted them to see I take your professional dreams seriously. You always have, from day one." On the first weekend of November, exactly 6 months after the disaster of the wedding that never happened, Emily made the permanent move to Sunflower Farm. The weather was perfect, neither too hot nor too cold, with a deep blue sky that seemed to bless the new beginning. Jack and Hank, the farm's longest-serving employee, came to pick up her things in the pickup truck. There weren't many belongings, just clothes, books, and a few personal items of sentimental value, but they represented an entire life, now merging with a new future. Martha was waiting for them with a special welcome lunch. The table was set on the porch, decorated with flowers picked from the garden and the family's best china. "To celebrate our new resident," the older woman explained, hugging Emily with genuine affection. Over lunch, they talked about plans for the future. The farm's organic certification was nearly complete, which would open new market opportunities for their products. The Rural Accounting Office already had 8 regular clients, all small producers from the area, who previously had no access to specialized accounting services. "And there's the Spring Festival next month," Martha reminded them. "We could set up a booth to promote the farm's products, the cheese, the dulce de leche." "Great idea, Aunt Martha," Jack agreed enthusiastically. Emily could also use it to promote the office. "Wait, Spring Festival?" Emily asked. "It's an annual event in 3 Rivers," Martha explained. "Producers from all over the region set up booths to sell their goods. There's live music, local food, crafts." "Sounds wonderful." "It'll be our first public appearance as—" Jack trailed off, suddenly seeming embarrassed. "As a couple," Emily finished, smiling. "As a family," Martha corrected naturally, making both of them blush. That afternoon, as they unpacked Emily's belongings in the room she would now share with Jack, a sudden storm swept over the farm. The heavy rain drumming on the roof created a comforting melody, like nature's own welcome song. "Rain is a blessing," Jack remarked, stopping by the window to watch the water falling over the fields. "It brings new life." Emily moved closer, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Like us," she murmured, resting her face against his broad back. "New life." He turned, pulling her into his arms. "Do you have any idea how much you've changed?" "My life?" he asked softly. "Before you, this farm was just work and worry. Now it's home, future." "For me too," Emily admitted. "I never imagined that terrible day at the church would bring me here. To you." Jack kissed her gently, a kiss that carried promises of many years ahead. "Fate," he murmured against her lips. It had to be fate. The following weeks passed in a peaceful yet productive rhythm, with Emily adapting to farm life while establishing her own work routine in the office. Her client base grew steadily, many referred by Jack himself, who made sure to mention the specialized accounting services in his conversations with other producers. One afternoon, as Emily Parker was organizing paperwork for a client's quarterly tax filing, she heard a commotion in the farmyard. Looking out the window, she saw a luxury pickup truck parking, from which a man in a suit stepped out, visibly out of place in the rural setting. Curious, she went out to see what was happening. Jack Miller was already there, speaking to the visitor in a polite but firm tone. "As I said, Mr. Blackwell, I'm not interested in selling," Jack stated as Emily approached. "You should reconsider," the man insisted, wiping his sweaty forehead with a handkerchief. "The offer is generous, well above market value." "Can I help with something?" Emily asked, stopping beside Jack. "Emily, this is Mr. Norman Blackwell, representing Sunrise Corporation," Jack introduced, placing a protective arm around her waist. "He came with an offer for the farm." "I didn't know it was for sale," Emily remarked, surprised. "And it's not," Jack confirmed. Norman Blackwell quickly sized her up, as if recalculating his strategy. "And you are?" "Emily Parker, accountant." "And Mr. Miller's partner," she replied, extending her hand professionally. "Ah, perfect." The man seemed pleased with the information. "Perhaps you, with your financial background, can help Mr. Miller see the wisdom in this deal. Sunrise Corporation is acquiring properties in the area for a major agricultural project. Our offer is 20% above the appraised value." "Interesting," Emily replied, keeping her expression neutral. "But I believe Mr. Miller has already made his position clear." "Surely a young couple like you could do a lot with that money," Blackwell pressed. "Buy a house in the city. Invest in a more modern business." Emily felt a growing indignation. The man spoke as if rural life were just a phase to outgrow, as if their work on the land held less value than the modern businesses in the city. "Our business is already quite modern, Mr. Blackwell," she answered with measured politeness. "Certified organic production, full traceability, sustainable practices. Things your major project likely doesn't prioritize." The man seemed momentarily thrown by her articulate response. "Even so, the scale of production we intend to implement would harm the region's ecological balance and destroy the way of life for dozens of families," Emily finished. "No, thank you. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a lot of work to do." Jack looked at her with poorly concealed admiration as the man, visibly irritated, returned to his vehicle. "This isn't over," Blackwell shouted before driving off, kicking dust with his tires. When they were alone, Jack pulled Emily into a tight embrace. "You were incredible," he whispered in her ear. "Absolutely incredible." "He irritated me," she admitted, talking as if our life here was something lesser, something to be traded for money. "That's exactly what Sunrise Corporation does," Jack explained, guiding her back to the house. "They buy small properties, convince owners that rural life has no future, then implement export monocultures that ruin the soil and pollute the water table." "Why do they want this farm so badly?" "Because of the spring," Jack answered, stopping on the porch to look over the land. "We have the main water source in the region. With it, they'd control the supply for all the surrounding farms." Emily felt a chill. This wasn't just business. It was control over a vital resource. "He'll be back, won't he?" "Absolutely," Jack confirmed. "I've been turning down their offers for months, but they've never sent someone this persistent before." That night, after Martha had gone to bed, Emily and Jack stayed up late, discussing what to do about Sunrise Corporation. The situation was worrying, but there was also something inspiring about fighting together for something they believed in. "You know what I thought today when we faced that man?" Jack commented, stroking Emily's hair as they lay under the stars in the hammock on the porch. "What?" "That I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He turned to face her. "Building, defending, creating something worthwhile. Our own legacy." "I want that too," murmured Emily, feeling her heart swell. "More than anything." He kissed her softly before continuing, "Emily Parker, will you marry me?" The proposal, so simple and sincere, brought tears to Emily's eyes. There was no bent knee, diamond ring, or romantic dinner, just two hearts that knew exactly what they wanted. "Yes," she answered, her voice choked with emotion. 1,000 times yes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The news of the engagement spread through Meadowbrook like wildfire. For many it was a surprise. Who would have thought the abandoned bride would find new love so quickly? For others, especially those who knew Emily well and had witnessed her transformation over the past months, it made perfect sense. Martha received the news with tears of joy, hugging her nephew and future niece as if they were her own children. "It's about time," the woman exclaimed, wiping her eyes. "I've been waiting for this moment since you showed up at our door in that wedding dress, my dear." "You knew?" Emily asked, laughing. "The moment I saw how Jack looked at you, even on that first day, I knew it was special," Martha confirmed. "My nephew has never been one to show his emotions easily, until you came along." Emily's parents received the news with a mix of surprise and caution. Richard especially seemed worried. "You're not rushing into this, are you?" he asked. During Sunday lunch, when the couple formally announced their engagement. "After what happened." "Dad, this has nothing to do with Brandon," Emily said firmly. "What I feel for Jack is completely different. It's real, solid." "We just don't want you to get hurt again," Sharon explained, squeezing her daughters. "Hannah, you were so devastated." "And now I'm happy," Emily replied, smiling. "Happier than I ever thought possible. It's not about forgetting what happened or replacing one thing with another. It's about finding something genuine, something I might never have found if I hadn't gone through that experience." Jack, who had been quietly observing the family interaction with respectful silence, finally spoke up. "Mr. Richard, Mrs. Sharon, I completely understand your concerns. If I were in your place, I'd feel the same. But I want you to know I love your daughter more than I can express, and I'll do everything in my power to make her happy every single day." The sincerity in his voice seemed to move even the practical-minded Richard, who nodded slowly. "Well, if that's the case," the older man cleared his throat, visibly emotional, "I suppose we have a wedding to plan." In the weeks that followed, as they prepared for the spring festival, the couple quietly began planning the ceremony. Unlike the extravagant event that had been planned with Brandon, this time Emily wanted something simple and intimate. "I don't need a packed church or a princess dress," she explained to Jack as they organized the products they'd take to the festival. "I just want you, our family, a few close friends, and lots of love." "Are you sure?" he asked, concerned. "I don't want you to feel like you're giving anything up." "I'm absolutely certain," she stated. "I've had my fill of spectacle. Now I only want what's real." The Three Rivers Spring Festival took place annually in the second week of December, bringing together farmers, artisans, and merchants from across the region for a 3-day celebration that drew visitors from neighboring states. For Sunflower Farm, it would be the grand debut of their certified organic products, specialty cheeses, traditional sweets, pure honey, and fresh vegetables. On the eve of the event, as they loaded the small van borrowed from a neighbor with farm goods, an unfamiliar car pulled into the yard. Jack, who was on the porch carrying boxes, paused to see who the visitor might be. A young man in a suit stepped out of the vehicle, definitely not Blackwell, the representative from Sunrise Corporation they had dismissed weeks before. This man seemed younger, more nervous, and carried a folder of documents under his arm. "Good afternoon," the young man greeted, approaching. "I'm looking for Mr. Jack Miller." "That's me," Jack replied, stepping down from the porch. "How can I help you?" "My name is Daniel Foster, from the legal department of Sunrise Corporation." The young man introduced himself, handing over a business card. "I'm here regarding an outstanding matter." Emily, who was organizing products inside the van, walked over upon hearing the company's name. "If this is about selling the farm, we've already made our position clear," she said firmly, standing beside Jack. Daniel Foster grew visibly more uncomfortable. "Actually, it's not exactly about the purchase. Sunrise Corporation has acquired the deeds to the neighboring property, Southern Cross Ranch." "And what does that have to do with us?" Jack asked. "After reviewing historical records, we discovered that, well," the young man hesitated, nervously opening the folder. "Part of what you consider your property is, legally, within the boundaries of Southern Cross Ranch." "Excuse me." Jack took a step forward, disbelieving. "It's a boundary dispute dating back to 1982, Daniel explained, showing old documents. "When your grandfather bought this land, the deed already had an inaccurate description of the boundaries. Sunrise Corporation is simply claiming what legally belongs to them." "And what part exactly would that be?" Emily asked, keeping her composure, while sensing Jack's tension beside her. Daniel unfolded a map over the car's hood. "This area here," he pointed to a section covering roughly 30% of Sunflower Farm. "It includes the spring and part of the eastern farmland." Jack paled. It was the most valuable part of the property. Without it, the farm would lose not just land, but economic viability. "This is absurd," he said, his voice shaking with indignation. "My family has worked this land for 3 generations. Unfortunately, possession doesn't guarantee legal ownership," Daniel replied, clearly reciting something he'd memorized. "Sunrise Corporation is willing to negotiate a transition period, but they'll need to take control of this area within 90 days. "And if we refuse?" Emily asked, immediately realizing this was just a strategy to force them to sell the entire farm. "A lawsuit will be unavoidable," the lawyer answered, handing over more documents. "Here's the formal notice. I recommend you consult your own attorney." As Daniel Foster's car disappeared down the dirt road, Jack looked devastated. He sat on the porch steps, the documents scattered beside him, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We can't lose the spring," he murmured, more to himself than to Emily. "Without water, the farm has no future." Emily carefully examined the documents left by the lawyer. "There must be some mistake, or worse, some manipulation," she said, studying the dates and official stamps. "This doesn't seem right." "What do we do?" asked Jack suddenly, seeming exhausted. "We don't have money for a legal battle against a corporation like Sunrise Corporation." Emily sat beside him, taking his hands in hers. "We'll go to the festival tomorrow, as planned," she said firmly. "We'll sell our products, show the world what Sunflower Farm has to offer. And on Monday we'll start fighting." "How?" "I don't know exactly yet," she admitted. "But I know we won't give up. Not after everything we've built here." That night, neither of them slept well. Still, the next morning they loaded the van as planned and headed to 3 Rivers with Mrs. Martha, determined not to let Sunrise Corporation's threat ruin their participation in the festival. Sunflower Farm's booth was set up in a prime location near the main entrance of the exhibition park. Emily had prepared an eye-catching banner highlighting their organic products and rural accounting services, while Jack and Hank arranged the goods in an artistic display. Mrs. Martha, dressed in her best embroidered apron, prepared to offer samples of cheeses and sweets. Little by little, the sadness from the night before was replaced by the vibrant energy of the festival. The booth soon drew visitors interested in organic products, and Mrs. Martha's specialty cheeses became a hit among connoisseurs. "I've never tasted such a delicious Virginia cheese," remarked an elegant lady, buying 3 pieces to take home. "What's the secret?" "Love, my dear," Mrs. Martha replied with a smile. "And happy cows, of course." By midday, as Emily explained the benefits of specialized accounting for small producers to a potential client, she noticed an elderly man studying Sunflower Farm's banner intently. There was something familiar about his wrinkled face and dignified posture, despite his advanced age. When she finished with the client, she approached the man, who was still examining the photos of the property on the banner. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked kindly. "This is the old cedar farm, isn't it?" he asked, pointing to a photo of the main house. "It's called Sunflower Farm now, but yes, I think it used to have that name," Emily confirmed, surprised. "Do you know it?" "Know it?" The old man smiled nostalgically. My father worked there for 40 years, young lady. I know every inch of that land. Jack, who was helping another customer, walked over when he heard the conversation. Your father worked for my grandfather? He asked, intrigued. Samuel Miller, old Samuel, the man confirmed, extending a trembling hand. Good man, your grandfather. I'm Anthony Brooks, but everyone calls me Tony. Nice to meet you, Tony, Jack replied, shaking the old man's hand respectfully. You said you know the land well. Like the back of my hand, the old man confirmed. I grew up running through those fields. I know where every fence was placed, every boundary marker. Emily and Jack exchanged meaningful glances. It could be a coincidence, or it could be exactly what they needed. Tony, would you have time to grab coffee with us? Emily invited. It seems we have a lot to talk about. For the next hour, while Mrs. Martha managed the booth, the couple spoke with Tony at a secluded table in the festival's food area. The old man revealed surprising details about the region's history. That spring has always belonged to Cedar Farm, that's a fact, he said with conviction. The confusion started when old Fletcher, owner of Southern Cross Ranch, tried to move the boundary markers during a drought back in 1980. Your grandfather caught him red-handed, and there was a nasty argument. That would explain the inaccuracy in the deed, Emily remarked, taking detailed notes. More than that, Tony continued. The county judge at the time was Fletcher's cousin. When your grandfather filed a lawsuit to secure his rights, things were arranged, let's say. Are you saying there was tampering with official documents? Asked Jack, incredulous. I'm saying your grandfather was deceived, but he didn't give up, replied the old man. He hired an independent surveyor from Richmond to get the land properly measured. I'm almost certain he kept those documents somewhere. At the farm? Asked Emily, hopeful. Probably in the false ceiling of the office, said Mr. Tony with a sly smile. That's where he hid everything important. He used to say even his wife didn't know about that hiding spot. Jack looked at Emily, a spark of hope lighting up in his eyes. I never knew about any false ceiling, he remarked, but the office has gone through several renovations over the years. It's behind the bookshelf, Mr. Tony explained. There's a loose plank that, when pushed, reveals a compartment. At least that's how it was in the 80s, the last time I saw your grandfather use it. The rest of the day at the festival passed in a haze of anxiety and anticipation. Though they continued serving customers and selling products, Emily and Jack's thoughts were fixed on the possible hiding spot and the documents that could save the farm. When they finally closed up their stall at the end of the day, they invited Mr. Tony to accompany them back to the property. The old man eagerly agreed, excited to revisit the place of his childhood. Night had already fallen when they arrived at Sunflower Farm. Mrs. Martha, who had returned with a neighbor to prepare dinner, welcomed the visitor with her characteristic hospitality, recognizing him immediately. Tony Brooks! Who would have thought, she exclaimed, hugging her old friend. How many years? It must be 30 since I last saw you. You haven't changed a bit, Mrs. Martha, he replied gallantly. Still the same beautiful lady as ever. While the two elders caught up in the kitchen, Emily and Jack went straight to the small office, armed with flashlights and determination. The bookshelf Mr. Tony had mentioned still existed, though it had been repainted and reorganized over the years. How will we know which plank is loose? Asked Emily, examining the seemingly solid structure. By tapping each one, I suppose, answered Jack, starting the task methodically. It was Emily who found it after nearly 15 minutes of searching. A distinct hollow sound revealed the different plank. Here, she exclaimed, tapping it again to confirm. It's definitely different. Carefully, Jack pressed the indicated area. After initial resistance, the plank gave way, revealing a narrow, dusty compartment. Inside, they found an old metal box, the kind used to store important documents. I can't believe it's really here, murmured Jack, lifting the box with trembling hands. They placed it on the table and together lifted the lid. Inside were various documents yellowed with age, old deeds, correspondence, receipts, and at the bottom exactly what they were looking for, a large envelope labeled Official Survey, Cedar Farm, 1983. Jack, look at this. Emily carefully opened the envelope, revealing detailed maps and a technical report signed by a licensed surveyor. These are the original measurements, with precise coordinates and everything. And look at the date, it's after the deed Sunrise Corporation is using. They nearly ran back to the kitchen, where Mr. Tony was calmly having coffee with Mrs. Martha. "We found it," announced Jack, placing the documents on the table, "exactly where you said it would be." The old man smiled, satisfied. Samuel was clever. He knew these papers would be needed someday. For the next several hours, they meticulously examined every document. The story that emerged was exactly as Mr. Tony had told them, a deliberate attempt by the former owner of Southern Cross Ranch to seize the spring, a questionable court ruling, and Samuel Miller's determination to document the truth for posterity. "This changes everything," Emily concluded, arranging the papers in chronological order. "With these documents, we can challenge Sunrise Corporation's claims, and with Mr. Tony's testimony, I don't know if an old man's will holds much weight in court," the elderly man remarked humbly. "It's worth more than you think," Emily assured him, "especially when backed by technical documentation." On Monday, while the spring festival continued without them, Emily and Jack went straight to Dr. Vincent's office, the only lawyer in Meadowbrook, bringing all the documents they had found. The lawyer, a meticulous man in his 60s, reviewed the material with professional care. "This is very interesting," he finally said, adjusting his glasses. "You have enough here to at least secure an injunction preventing Sunrise Corporation from taking any action while the case is being heard." "And what are our chances of winning outright?" Jack asked tensely. "I'd say they're good," the lawyer replied cautiously. "But land disputes are rarely simple or quick. Sunrise Corporation has the resources to drag this out, hire experts." "We have resources too," Emily declared firmly. "Maybe not financial ones, but we have the truth on our side, and now we have proof. We won't back down, Dr. Vincent. This land has an owner, a history, and a future." The lawyer nodded, impressed by Emily's resolve. "In that case, prepare for a battle. But with this documentation and a strong testimony like Mr. Tony's, there's hope. I'll file everything today." The following months were intense. The legal battle against Sunrise Corporation unfolded slowly, but the injunction was granted, preventing any occupation or interference with the disputed land. The story of the conflict gained traction on social media and in local newspapers, especially after a special report on the importance of water and sustainable small farms, where Emily and Jack gave an interview, with Mrs. Martha as the supporting star and the source of the most memorable quotes. While the legal fight continued, life at Sunflower Farm flourished. Emily officially opened her office, now with a small team, serving over 20 local producers. The cheese and sweets production became a regional brand, and the farm began hosting school groups and tourists interested in agroecology. And in April, under a clear golden sky surrounded by sunflowers Emily had insisted on planting around the orchard, she and Jack said yes in front of friends, neighbors, and family. The ceremony was simple. A wooden altar set up under the shade of a mango tree, with Mrs. Martha as the informal officiant, and Mr. Tony in a borrowed suit carrying the rings with slow steps and an emotional smile. That afternoon, between toasts with guava juice, dancing to the accordion's tune, and laughter around the tables, Emily felt a deep peace. Not just because she had found love in what once seemed like ruin, but because she had rediscovered herself, whole, strong, deserving of respect and happiness. And so, what began with a dirt-stained dress and tears in an empty church ended with bare feet on the grass and eyes shining before a new beginning. Not as a second chance, but as the right chance, at the right time. Because true love doesn't care about dresses, numbers, or social expectations. True love sees the soul, and in it, the most fertile field of all. The end of the story. If you enjoyed this story, leave your like, share it with someone who believes in new beginnings, and remember, every heart has its season to bloom even after the longest drought.